their dad, I didn't have a dad in my house. He left when I was 6, so I was raised by an incredible mom. But I go to their house and they had this big, strong man running their family. I'm like 8, 9, 10 years old, and he would kind of yell and bark. And I was kind of terrified of him. But I watched my cousins and they would just blow it off because he was all bark and no bite. He was actually a very soft guy. He was just very gruff exterior. And I think when people are thinking about our structure of actually using this to defer the capital gains, they see the IRS and it's like that loud barking dog and they're terrified of it. They're like, oh no, he's gonna get me. But in reality, for us, we're like the kids in that home that know, hey, we got a 30-year track record. There's thousands of transactions, there's billions of dollars in sales. There's over 24 audits over those 30 years, which is a very low audit rate. All of them, no findings, no change. And so a lot of times our clients are coming in and their first aversion is, I don't want to get audited.
Hey everybody, Brett Swartz here, Capital Gains Tax Solutions with Dan Palmer. We are talking about installment sales with trust, exiting, not using 1031 exchanges, and really just building capital gains tax exit plans. You know, one of the biggest questions we get, Dan, is, you know, what if I just keep the status quo? And what's the hidden cost of doing nothing? In fact, maybe it's not so much asked as it should be, but I think one of the core things we should speak about today is, you know, most ultra wealthy or highly successful business owners and families with their wealth can get destroyed by bad investments and or just not having a capital gains tax plan, just bad tax planning, right? So lack of proactive tax planning, estate tax elimination that they could have eliminated, doing deals like in a 1031 where they end up having liquidity problems or just waiting too long and so their options get diminished. And so, Dan, what if doing nothing costs your family hundreds of millions of dollars? Let's walk through that today on this short episode. But Dan, this loss aversion, I think sometimes gets people to move more than the gain. I think it's important to cover today. What do you think?
Yeah, I think people that are moderately wealthy or just starting to kind of build a nest egg are much more motivated to double or triple or to be aggressive to grow their wealth, but are really high net, investors or clients. They're more like, how do I just grow without risking what I've already built? And so I think there's a greater motivation in being averse to taking big chances, big swings when they've kind of already made it. And so, this idea of risk aversion being a greater motivator than actual gain, that losing $10 feels worse than making $20 feels good. That idea is very interesting when you start dealing with people that are trying to grow their wealth or to hold on to their wealth and just not lose it in a bad investment or something that is more risk than they're willing to take.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And I think a part of this too is looking at what is the hidden cost of not taking action is the other side of this too. I think sometimes the initial instinct is if you haven't heard of something and or if your CPA haven't heard of something, well, maybe there's a lot of risk in it, because wouldn't everyone be doing it? And so there's this idea of, man, do I have something at risk here? Well, I think you look at the audit defense and the track record and how it's defended and how it's been defended close to 30 years and thousands of transactions, all of that, and perfect legal track record. That's a part of it. But the other part of it is the cost of not doing anything, right? In fact, I think the one that gets missed the most is the myth is, hey, it's only just the cap gains tax. It's only just 20, 30, 40, 50%, which is a big amount at closing. But it's not just that. It's the loss of the ability to compound the income in a very efficient way. The most expensive tax is the income tax deferral. So I think understanding just the financial loss that is at risk is huge. And so let's look at that, Dan. Like, let's do a scenario where...
Let me just step back a little bit to the risk of an audit or something like. I mean, I think that is something that people are very averse to early on. But it reminds me of my interactions with my cousins at my cousin's house. Their dad, I didn't have a dad in my house. He left when I was 6, so I was raised by an incredible mom. But I go to their house and they had this big, strong man running their family. I'm like 8, 9, 10 years old, and he would kind of yell and bark. And I was kind of terrified of him. But I watched my cousins, and they would just blow it off because he was all bark and no bite. He was actually a very soft guy. He was just very gruff exterior. And I think when people are thinking about our structure of actually using this to defer the capital gains, they see the IRS and it's like that loud barking dog, and they're terrified of it. They're like, oh no, he's gonna get me. But in reality, for us, we're like the kids in that home that know, hey, we got a 30-year track record. There's thousands of transactions. There's billions of dollars in sales. There's over 24 audits over those 30 years, which is a very low audit rate. All of them, no findings, no change. And so a lot of times our clients are coming in and their first aversion is, I don't want to get audited. I don't want to, have it turn out worse. And we're like, 30 years. Thousands of transactions, and so that aversion may cost them 30, 40, 50% of their gain because they're so afraid of the bark that they just give all the money. Just give it all up right at the beginning instead of trusting the process, trusting the track record, trusting the expertise of the tax attorneys who's created this process and also have survived the audits. I always tell people every strategy works until you get audited. And once you get audited, it has to withstand the scrutiny of the IRS. And fortunately for us, we have a 30-year track record of doing exactly that. Every audit, no finding, no change. And so it gives people a lot of comfort to take that first step. You can't even get to the other steps unless you take that first step to say, let me defer the tax, let me hold on to all of the proceeds of my sale and get it invested and working for me. And there's a lot of bark there. I mean, we hear the IRS and we instantly kind of start sweating and we get really nervous, but tax deferral is their idea. It's in the IRC 453. They put it in there. They're fine with you earning a lot of money over your lifetime. They'll get their bite of the apple way down the road. And we want it to be way, way down the road. But they'll get their bite of the apple. In the meantime, you can benefit from the growth of your wealth.
Oh, that's so important. You're absolutely right. And that's usually the number one objection where it stops people is either their CPA adds to that bark, echoes that bark, and or they kind of just freeze up and say, it's too much to think about. And so during this big business exit or this big real estate exit or my big stock or Bitcoin exit, I just, and that can lead to that loss. So 100%. By the way, how long does that bark actually last? Well, it's about a 2 to 3 year, maybe 4 year window, depending what state you're in, of the actual audit kind of window. In fact, it's typically 12 to 24 months after you file that first return from the time that you sell. So it's not going to happen in the first year because you're not going to report yet. So that's kind of the window. And after that, the window closes and there's no audit ability for them to go back and audit you. And so this is also something to realize that once people go, oh, it's not like forever they can audit me on this. No, it's not. It's about a 2 to 3 year, maybe 4 year if you're in certain states, audit window. And again, it's a very low audit risk. And second, all the audits that have been defended successfully. So that's that part of it. The other myth I think people have about using our structure and strategy is, again, this is only saving capital gains tax, and this is simply not true. In fact, the upfront capital gains tax, I believe, is maybe second or third of the biggest financial advantage of using our strategy. And the real power, again, is the compounding effect of tax deferral over time. So let's look at an example. Let's break this down. So Dan, imagine you're selling a $10 million asset in California. We'll keep it a zero basis, right? Here's what the exposure may look like. Total 20% federal, 13.3 state of California, 3.8 net investment income tax, known as like the Obamacare tax. The total estimated exposure is approximately 37% if we're not counting depreciation recapture. Okay, now that means roughly 3.7 million disappears immediately to taxes outside of planning. So most people stop the analysis there and say, well, would I rather have maybe peace of mind, not worrying about what they think is a perceived audit risk, or would I rather have about $6 million, versus 10 in this trust, right? But that's a mistake to stop there, because the bigger story begins with the true hidden cost. We know this is opportunity cost, that is not just the tax payment, but it's the ongoing compounding effect of the income tax deferral. So let's walk through this.
It's hard to get people's mind wrapped around that when they're just starting. But if you think about it, it's like you're losing 3.7 million right off the top. But you're actually losing more than that, because that 3.7 million that you are giving up right at the point of sale to tax at 10% is going to kick off $370,000 a year after year after year, compounding, and you're losing all of that as well. So you're losing the 3.7 million, but you're also losing all of the interest income that 3.7 million will kick off over time. And I like to use 10% because it helps people with math. It just makes it a lot easier. But 370,000 is life changing. And so you've lost the 3.7 million, which is damaging to your overall wealth. But then you've also surrendered 370,000 every year, as long as that money is in the trust, compounding and growing in your favor. And so it's a compounding loss, just like using our strategy as a compounding gain. And people don't realize that. They're just thinking about the moment of the tax, but it's actually a compounding loss. You're losing that 370,000 year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, indeterminately. The losses keep piling up over time. Just like when you hold on to the full proceeds, it compounds in your favor year after year after year. It's like the difference between going up a mountain or going down a mountain into a trough. And that's what people do. 3.7 million and then 307, and they're just going down the mountain, when our goal in our life is to climb that mountain of wealth and get to the summit. We want to get to the point where we have a legacy. And so surrendering at the moment of sale, and then surrendering every year afterwards the interest income that money would have produced, is pretty devastating.
100%. A compounding loss, not just compounding gain, I think will be the title of this video. And let's break that down even more precise. So again, what we're saying is, it's not just the receiving of 370,000 per year. It's also the ability to defer that every year. And let's take 10 million at 10%. That's $1 million. You could also defer $1 million. So think about that. If you're in a higher tax bracket, 35, 40%, or higher tax states, it can be up to 50% if you're making $1 million per year. That's a massive compounding loss that you're taking if you have to take that money that's not inside something that can defer that income. And so what we're saying is that if you have to receive it all in one given year, that's a big tax hit. But for your ability to defer all or in part, this is really important, it's the ability to take, let's say, I only need $250,000 in year 1, Dan, and I'll let the other $650 just compound. Or that next year, maybe I need, $600,000, and let the other $400,000 compound. I might move out of state and establish residency in a new state, which is a new tax rate, so that income tax is dropped or lower. And so, Albert Einstein, reportedly called compounding interest the 8th wonder of the world. And I think the highest tax being income tax, if you can defer that and let that compound, that may be even more powerful, right? Because our two biggest expenses in life, Dan, are, death and taxes, right? Or you can't escape them, or what you don't know in taxes. Well, if I can take the most expensive thing that you're ever going to pay in income tax and let you compound that with the 8th wonder of the world, how powerful is that?
Yeah, a lot of our clients are actually still in their prime earning years, and they have other streams of income, and they don't really need the money. And so, it's a great visual to go, like, take that $10 million example, and you go, you know what? I don't really want any interest. I just want it to grow. So the full 10 million hits the trust. Say it got invested and it earned 10%. After 1 year, you have 11 million in the trust. Then you have 12.1 million in the trust. You do have to take some disbursements in year 2 and 3 because we like to show that there was disbursements, you paid the appropriate tax on it, and then when the audit window closed, there's flexibility for what you need to do. But you can easily go from that 10 million sale, which if you paid the tax, you're gonna have 6 million and change instead of 10. But you have 10, now you have 11, now you have 12.1. And you see how rapidly the compounding interest grows. And it's capital gains tax deferred, and it's also interest income tax deferred until you receive it. So that first year, that extra $1 million in interest is in the trust. It's interest income tax deferred. It's sitting in a pile of money that's capital gains tax deferred, and it's compounding in your favor. It really is a wonder of the world.
It is. It's really, and people hate taxes. We hate unnecessary taxes, right? And so using every legal means necessary and building a team to help you is what we're here to do, and want to help you, the advisor, help your clients. The owner of a business or real estate or Bitcoin or stock who want to exit, we're here to help you. By the way, let me also just tell you, what do you have to lose? This is just quickly 8 things. I'm not going to be able to cover all 8 today, but I'm just going to cover a few. I'm going to introduce a few of them here. Okay. So what do you have to lose? The hidden cost of paying taxes too soon is basically what we've been talking about, right? What do you have to lose? Your ability to diversify, right? What if you took that same $4 million and you put it into something that you otherwise didn't have to put into, right? Real estate or stocks or Bitcoin or something else. What do you have to lose? Your freedom of timing, right? You have no timing if you just pay the $3.74 million up front. What do you have to lose? Your retirement cash flow, right? You actually having enough for your retirement. What do you have to lose? The opportunity to reposition your wealth, the legacy wealth for your children, your next investment opportunity. You can take that same $4 million that you would have paid in tax and go buy a new real estate property at $10 million, and guess what? Get a new depreciation schedule. So you didn't just lose out on that $4 million, but what that $4 million could do for you to buy that new investment piece of real estate. We have a special way that we do that, by the way. It just gives you a fresh depreciation schedule, which you can get about 80% of that depreciation. Wow, how cool is that? You lose on the ability to get not only just the $4 to do something for you, but also the ability to get some depreciation. I'd also say peace of mind during volatile markets. If I have 10 million versus like 6 million, gosh, I can be a lot more conservative with my approach, right? Because I don't necessarily need to be as risky to get a certain cash flow. This is so powerful for people. I want to end with this story and then we'll wrap it up. And I think it's still one of my favorite stories for the estate tax. And it's with a gentleman named John Dutton, okay? And Mr. Dutton is known as Kevin. He's also known as Kevin Costner, but I feel like he's almost more known as John Dutton these days, how popular the Yellowstone show got. But he's living in Montana, and he's got a couple kids, and one child in particular is a daughter named Beth. And Beth is a really smart attorney, and she goes to Dad and says, Dad, you've got billions of dollars or $1 billion worth of land. Let's call it $1 billion. They never really quite gave that price of the property in the show, but it's worth a lot. And you need to sell it, because if you don't sell it, Dad, they're going to kill you. And if you don't sell it and they kill you, the death tax is going to kick in and they're going to take the land anyways. And he goes, Beth, we're never selling the land. It's in the family forever. And she's like, but Dad, we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. If you just would sell it. Now, she doesn't say this, but I'm going to add this to the episode if I was the writer of it. And called Capital Gains Tax Solutions, they would set up a irrevocable trust where you could sell it for $1 billion to the trust, and the trust could sell it to the ultimate buyer, and the trust could issue you an annuity agreement, and then we can get all that $1 billion outside the taxable estate, which then gives us as the kids, eliminates the $400 million death tax, save the $30 million exemption if you're married or $15 million single. And then it would have went to black, right? She would have dropped the mic, Dan. We would have solved the whole show. He would have put it up for sale. He would have sold the thing, and they would live happily ever after. So, Dan, in that scenario, what is the loss that's at stake, right? What are we looking at here?
For the Yellowstone analogy? Yeah. I mean, the whole show's about that. The whole thing, all the activity and the action and the fighting and the cattle and everything is about maintaining this land and keeping it for the property. And so, I think it'd be a really boring show if they just brought us in and we set them up with our structure. But that would solve a lot of problems in that show. Yes,
right. So, by the way, just to remind you, most families assume that the stepped-up basis solves everything. I wouldn't say most, but many, okay? It's just not true, right? It does not. The stepped-up basis may reduce capital gains tax for heirs, which it typically does with the stepped-up basis, if it's still around, by the way, by the time you die. No one knows for sure if that's still going to be around. But it does not eliminate estate or death taxes. Once the estate exceeds exemption thresholds, again, 30 million married, 15 million single. So for families of highly appreciated real estate businesses, concentrated assets, Bitcoin stock, that can be a catastrophic liquidity problem, okay? So we want you to not be Mr. Dutton and get stuck. And it's not just $1 billion worth of net worth. It's 50 million. It's 75 million. It's actually anything above 30 million married, 15 million single. Anything above and beyond that is subject to the 40% debt tax. And that's not even including certain states that have additional debt tax that's connected to that. So check with your state. What can you do? You can set up, you can call us, we can help you build a capital gains and estate tax exit plan. Sell while you're still alive, eliminate the estate tax. By the way, for this trust version we're referring to, we call it the 2.0 version of our structure strategy. The kids can be the beneficiaries, okay? And so it's more of an estate planning with the cap gains tax, income tax deferral. However, during the lifetime, you will pay some more cap gains tax because it needs to pay you partial principal, partial interest based upon your life expectancy. If you're interested in learning more about any of this, what Dan and I are talking about, we want to encourage you to go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com, capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. Schedule a no-cost, no-obligation consultation with our team. And that being said, Dan, any last words for anyone who's listening out there?
Yeah, don't get afraid of the bark. I always like to tell people, this isn't tax evasion, it's not tax avoidance, it's tax deferral, and that's not our idea. It's actually the government's idea. That's why they wrote it in the code. So use it in your favor to grow your wealth and bless your family for the years to come in your life and also beyond.
Beautiful. Thank you, Dan, and thank you everyone listening. And go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com if you would. We would love the opportunity to talk with you. Thank you so much. Bye.